Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to talk about assessment. My name is Maria de Los Angeles Mendoza Gonzalez. Let me present. Okay, here we go. Okay, the topic is assessments, objectives, techniques, and other elements involved with assessment. Assessment involves measuring the performance of our students and, oh goodness, and the progress they are making. It helps us to be able to diagnose the problems they have and to provide them with useful feedback, which is really important. Then there are several ways to present or develop the topic of assessment. In this case, I have these three different elements, which are formal assessment, then informal assessment, and self-assessment. Formal assessment. Well, when we talk about formal assessment, it means that it's going to assess a broad range of language. The formal assessment is done to assess learning and can be administered during a course. Okay, formal assessment is also often backward looking. That means assessing the effect of part of a course or a complete course. Then informal assessment is a way of collecting information about our students' performance in normal classroom condition, which is the important, okay? Is when we are in a class or during the class. And self-assessment, well, self-assessment, it's a type of assessment which is it can be administered by the teacher or only by the students, okay? They make the assessments, they can ask themselves some questions, and sometimes if we have a textbook, this self-assessment comes at the end of each unit or topic, so the student can learn more about how they learn, about their progress, and be conscious about this, okay, about his or her development in class. Okay, now talking about the formal assessment. There are different types of assessments, and according to the objectives of each assessment is going to be presented to the students or given to the students. One is before the course, and this is called an aptitude assessment, and is used to predict who will be a successful learner according to the individual ability to acquire a second language. Then there are others that can be administered during the course. For example, the placement test, and this is very usual, and it is used to make decisions regarding the student's placement into appropriate groups of learning. It means that, for example, if it's a student that perhaps has some background in learning the language, but exactly doesn't know in which level can be place or can join a group, then we can assess, okay, with this placement test. So as a teacher, we know, or we can give advice about in which of the different levels of learning these students can continue studying, for example. And then there is the diagnostic test. This is a test that provides detailed information about the content of a particular course or a part of general theory or language proficiency, which is also very important because with this, the student can have more elements to really know where he or she needs to continue studying or to pay more attention, okay, in order to learn or to acquire this information needed. And the achievement, it is a test that comes at the end at a relatively long period of learning and used for having a promotion, certification, or qualification to a job. Okay, then it is, as we can see, a certification, and it can be different. For example, the IELTS, the TOEFL, which are the most popular tests, okay, in our environment, of course. And yeah, that's also another which is similar to the last one, which could be also for certificate, but it is called proficiency. And it is a test expected to reflect the language requirements of the target situation and will cover specific language abilities. And some of these are the ones also for certificate, but there are more, of course. But these are called proficiency because are administered by international entities, okay? And while in the other, maybe the certificate could be only provided by the language center, for example, and not necessarily in an international test. Okay, our last topic is about categorization of formal tests, and this means in the historical phases. And there are three types of tests in this categorization, which is the first generation test, second generation, and third generation test. The first one, which is the first generation test, these type of tests are associated with grammar translation approach. And the type of activities that are provided in this type of test are the mostly translation and composition. Because of the approach. In the second generation test, okay, this type of tests are associated with a structuralist view. And in this, the questions measure one item of language, and the tests are long. And the third generation tests are associated with the communicative approach, and they are the integrative type. It means that are subjective and also objective testing formats. And when we say this, is because the objective testing are the kind of the second generation test. It means that measure one item or language, but also in this, because it's integrative, there are some subjective elements. For example, when it comes from the speaking or to give an oral presentations, sometimes it is a kind of subjective, even there is a rubric or another type of document to grade it, but it has to be mostly with the type of vocabulary and the fluency and pronunciation and other elements that sometimes can be subjective. That's why it is, but it's important. It's important to integrate all of these elements here. And also these tests are contextualized while the others aren't. So in this type of the tests in two generations are more similar or present some simulations, perhaps about situations that can happen in real life. Okay, assessment techniques. In informal assessment, well, the formal assessment has to be continuous. It needs some band scales of possible student performance and descriptors for each band. Harris and McCann in 1994 offer a very simple band scale for speaking. Of course, there are some more difficult than this, but this is just an example. And we can here appreciate that it comes from 5 to number 1, where the number 5 is the most important grade, which is, it weighs 5. And the number 1 is that it's incomprehensible, okay? Or the person is unable to use language, so it goes to high allow items, okay? Or scores, in this case, scores. Okay, so it comes from the number 5 is the higher than the others, and it speaks fluently, almost no errors. In 4 speaks quite fluently. The person presents some errors. The number 3 is some difficulty in speaking because there are many errors. And number 2 is difficulty in speaking, almost incomprehensible. And 1, unable to use language, incomprehensible. So these are type of scales. Of course, it should be more analytic to know why or what type of errors should be, but this is an example, okay? Then in self-assessment, okay, which are the assessment techniques? Well, self-assessment used to monitor their own progress. That's why it's self-assessment. Harris and McCann explained the need to become a part of the classroom routines. Okay, it's not something that can be presented or done only once in the semester or in an academic year, but it should be something that continue, okay? Then the objective is that learners can reflect on their language learning, diagnose their problem area in language, set their own objectives, and assess their progress. And it can be only like that, a checklist about the things I learned or I haven't learned, or I am on my way, or I have some difficult, okay, parts to understand or to do, okay? Well, formal assessment, objective testing techniques, they can be discrete point according to Heaton in 1975. And he established that this objective testing includes this type of elements or characteristics. For example, the test can be of transformation, and we have some example there. John Brown is a very fast runner. Then we have to change it to John Brown's runs, okay? And completion, the time is now half, and we have to complete, okay, on the blank. Combination, and did her homework. Then she went swimming, okay? And we need to add or to include the word after, okay? In between the two sentences. Another type is the addition, okay, for yet, okay, and then having you seen the film, there is a blank also there, so we need to add the yet in the part of this question, which should be rearrangement, okay? And then we have this that is in disorder, and we have to arrange again in the correct way, the sentence. Then we have the number 6, which is correct, incorrect, or true or false. Okay, put a tick if the statement is correct, and a cross if it is incorrect, okay? And then we have the sentences. So these are some types of discrete points. It means that there is only one type of answer which is correct. That's why it's discrete point. And these sentences is correct or is incorrect. There is no more. That's why we can know which is an objective testing technique. Is correct or is incorrect. There are no more doubts or subjective elements. Then integrative objective assessment techniques led to the development of items to be scored less subjectively, which is what I was saying, because If there is correct or incorrect item, then there are no doubts about it, okay? It cannot be interpreted in this type of test, because that's why it's objective. Okay, some of these type of techniques are that they improve multiple choice. In this case, the questions might ask the students to answer a wide range of sources. Not only, for example, if it's a reading, there is a question, but there are going to be 2 or 3 readings, not only one. That's why it's improved. The multiple matching. Well, is when there are 2 columns and with list of things to match. And then is the dictation, which is another type of technique to be used here, and information transfer. In this case, we can use pictures, diagrams, maps, or any other visual element. And then the student is asked to write or to complete an order and then write sentences or write a story or retell the story that is being telling according to the visual clues. And the students has to retell the story, for example, okay? Well, about alternatives in assessment. Okay, not all of all the assessment have to be with a test, okay? Even if they are objective or subjective. But also there are other type of assessment that we can apply in the classroom or outside the classroom, but during the course to help us to understand and to check the progress that our students are doing, and also they can learn more about how they are doing and how they are going during the course. Okay, some of these are, for example, the journals, which are documents that can be online or they can only be written, okay, in the notebook. And in these documents, the students have to talk about a topic or only reflect on the activities they perform during the class and why they are important, and other elements that the teacher can provide to give them a guide. So these journals can be good for them, and they can be useful for the learning. Another is portfolios assessment. It's construct of evidence that documents individual student performance and progress. So it's to have all the evidence, okay? And they can review and analyze and be aware about how they've been improving during the course. And performance-based assessment is when the student produce a product or perform an act, okay? Conclusions. Testing is necessary to learn how the students are doing. If they are learning and accomplishing their learning objectives, to predict the students' abilities and styles of learning, to provide a score, to find out in which level the student should learn, and also to obtain a certification sometimes. When planning a test or choosing a test to be used with the students, it's necessary to consider the skills to be assessed, the type of test, the way the items will be scored, the construction of the items, and the validity and reliability they have. Also, the utility, discrimination, and practicality are other elements that have to be reviewed to make a decision when selecting or making a test. Feedback is important when assessing. Learners become more involved in their learning process and gain confidence in what they are expected to learn and to what standard. Okay, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this short presentation. Have a nice day. Bye.